Hello and welcome to this ACCA AFM video presentation. And this particular video is targeted to those students who are contemplating taking ACCA AFM, which I call my exam, my paper, if you don't mind, as one of their two option papers. So it's entitled What's in ACCA AFM? So what I want to cover here are the following 5 areas. And 4 of them are really just based purely on, factual elements. So you've got an objective piece of objective data to make a decision about what is going to be ACCA AFM as an option paper. And then secondly, I'll put my personal opinion at the end, my comments at the end, right in the last element of it. So I'm going to cover what is in the syllabus, what is the broad elements of this syllabus, what is the exam format, though I think many of you may already know the exam format, but I think it's important that I basically just reiterate that to you. The professional skills and how they are examined in ACCA AFM, the spreadsheet shortcuts, which is something I think many candidates who look at AFM may not be fully aware of the amount of shortcut calculations that circumvent the amount of calcs needed at AFM and makes it a much simpler paper as far as those calculations are concerned. And like I said at the end, I'll come up with what is going to be my final comments. Now, when you compare ACCA AFM with its related paper of financial management, what you see at what is going to be the professional level compared to applied skills is a much narrower syllabus with more depth. And what I've done here is to summarize the syllabus into what is going to be the following 7 areas. So first of all, you have financial objectives, which is primarily a discussion area as far as the exam is concerned. It's a theory-based area, and that sets the foundation for what AFM is all about. We then have the areas of cost of capital and long-term finance. Cost of capital, following on from FM is company WACC. We add in risk-adjusted WACC. We also bring in a value called KEI, which we use in an advanced in a APV calculation. We then have the discussions on long-term finance, and I can't deny that a lot of the elements on long-term finance deal with corporate bond and the corporate bond market. But there are also elements in there of what is going to be things like the securitization of future income and the ideas of Islamic finance. So a nice mix there between what is both calculations and what is going to be theory discussion parts. Then I've lumped together what is going to be 3 topics of dividend policy, forecasting, and ratio analysis. And I don't deny that things like forecasting could also be in the area at the top on what is going to be corporate reconstructions. So you have those 3 areas. And so when you're looking at policy, forecasting, and ratio analysis, predominantly they're going to have calculations in. There will obviously be some discussions on the ratios that are computed and on the various dividend policies. Now you'll see here there are 3 areas highlighted in yellow. Why is that the case? The 3 areas highlighted in yellow must appear on every AFM exam to some extent. So that is advanced investment appraisal with or without real options. And as soon as you think of investment appraisal, you're thinking about net present value. We bring in things like internal rate of return. We bring in modified internal rate of return. We bring in project duration. Option pricing, you'll see, is a really lovely area of the syllabus now because of the fact that we now build in this new BSOP calculator. And then we have risk management and treasury. And risk management and treasury is general risk management. Then we've got what is going to be FX risk, and we've got interest rate risk, as well as the functions of the setup and functions of treasury. And like I said, each AFM exam to some extent, each AFM exam to some extent must test advanced investment appraisal with or without real options and risk management. Then finally, at the bottom in green, I have the area of business valuations and corporate reconstructions. And there is nothing more realistic, in my opinion, than business valuations. It's something that every accountant, every qualified accountant is going to come across at some point in time. Either they are working for an organization that is selling part of the business, or they're working for a practice where an entity is buying a company or offloading part of their business. And business valuations and corporate reconstructions, those, are probably the most tested areas of AFM when you look at historical exams, because they're very popular because of their practical nature. I'm not saying that things like risk management and advanced investment appraisal, etc., are not, what is going to be, practical. But business valuations and the reconstruction of companies is, like I said, a very, very practical area. So the examiners very much like to test those sides of it. And if we went back and looked at many past AFM examination papers, you will not be surprised that many of them, not all of them, but many of them, have the questions based around what's in yellow and what's in green. I'm not saying that the aspects in white above are not tested. Of course they are. They can come into the examination. But when you talk about the weighting factor, the leaning towards what's in yellow and what's in green is far greater. And that's what makes this examination, in terms of a syllabus, very, very narrow. It's a narrow syllabus with what is going to be depth. What about the split between written and what is going to be calculations? Again, these are approximate numbers. We're moving since we've gone to professional skills, and that's made a big factor here. The calculations are around 45% ish based on the current sort of exams that we've seen, and the written theory is 55% ish. So that's those are just approximate numbers of the way in which the split is going to be between those two areas. So that's the syllabus, and that's the split between calculations and theory written part. Exam format is a very, very straightforward one. We have question one worth 50 marks, which is predominantly based around a report to a board of directors, accompanied by appendices for what is going to be calculations. There could be a precursor requirement, which is a theory-based requirement outside of the report, which again is discursive based rather than calculation based. And there are 10 marks for professional skills inside what is going to be question number one. And I'm going to talk about the professional skills shortly. We then come to what is going to be questions 2 and 3. The examining team like to call that what is going to be section B, but to all intents and purposes, you've got 3 questions and you've got to do them all. Yeah. So you've got 25 marks for each. They're predominantly one topic based. There's going to be support topics, but they're predominantly one topic based. Yeah. And there are 5 marks for what is going to be professional skills. So you've got a fairly straightforward exam format to follow. And I would say to you, this is an obvious statement, but I'm going to make the statement, right? There is half the marks for question one and half the marks for questions 2 and 3. So questions 2 and 3 rank equally with what is going to be question number one. And generally speaking, question 2 and 3 are normally a little bit easier to digest. Not that question one is hard to digest, but questions 2 and 3 are easier to digest than what would appear in what is going to be question one. But a pretty standard format as far as the exam is going to be concerned. Now, I mentioned professional skills. Let's look at how professional skills are being tested in what is going to be AFM. Now, professional skills came into play from September 2022, and at the time of recording this particular video presentation, we have seen two examination papers so far, one of them published, one only recently sat by the students, which contain the professional skills marks. So, professional skills are worth 20 marks in AFM, split between communication, analysis and evaluation, skepticism, and what is going to be commercial acumen. And as I've stated above, 10 marks of those are going to be in what is going to be question one, and 5 marks each in what is going to be questions 2 and 3. Like I said, all 4 are tested in what is going to be question number 1. And when you look at those 4 tested in question number 1, communication is, to me, in my opinion, the easiest one to score on, where you're going to pick up 4 or 5 for setting out a nice report with what is going to be the relevant appendices. And then the latter 3, so all 4 are tested in Q1, and the latter 3, analysis, evaluation, skepticism, and commercial acumen, are tested in what is going to be section B, and they are going to be worth 5 marks out of what is going to be a maximum of 7. So if I give my views on these here, so here I'm going to give a little bit of views based on what we've seen in relation to the guidance produced by the ACCA. The communication marks, I've said before, are straightforward. You're going to get 4 or 5, and any candidate doing AFM would expect to get 4 or 5, depending what they allocate in what is going to be Q1. The analysis and evaluation is about the way we process the calculations and how we comment on them. And they are, again, relatively straightforward to get as far as AFM is going to be concerned. Where the examiners have been fantastic is they've given us plenty of guidance on how you get skepticism marks and plenty of guidance of how you get commercial acumen marks. So, for instance, on skepticism, when we have assumptions behind some of the calculations, we question those assumptions with conviction. With commercial acumen, 2 things we have to do. 1, make sure that we're relating it to the details in the question, it's question specific. And secondly, bringing in the wider business knowledge, the wider finance and business knowledge that could apply in that particular situation. But plenty of guidance comes into play as far as the professional skills are going to be concerned. Now, part of the analysis marks is to present calculations using the spreadsheet response area of the ACCA. And I have more calculations in my paper, AFM, than in the other papers, which are the other option papers and the other professional papers being at what is going to be the ACCA professional level. So we have more calculations here than in SBR, SBL, in APM, in AAA, and in what is going to be ATX. And for that reason, and because you're doing a professional level paper, you would expect that the facilities and shortcuts available in real life business scenarios should be available in the exam. So so the ACCA, with their response area, have taken calculations which may at the lower level been done in a fairly longer format, and we've circumvented them and we've quickened them up. And I just want to show you here, a summary of them. And I've taken and put them into Excel just to make this presentation nice and straightforward for us. So this is what I mean about the sort of skills that you've got. And I've just broken them down into things like compounding. And if you look at the equation cell here, you can see here what I'm talking about in relation to the approaches that you're adopting to do here. Yeah, no need to do long calculations here. It's all done. Once you've done one of these here, you literally are copy and pasting the equations for the other two across, and it automatically calculates for them. You might remember in FM the old discount factor tables. Well, you don't need those in AFM because you can literally set up an equation, in this case 1.1 raised to the power of, yeah, and then just copy and paste, and away it goes. Even things like annuity discount factors, you don't even need the tables for that anymore. You can see there the command minus PV, in this case 5%, comma 4 years, comma 1, and there it is. Yeah, so you can see that you can just really quicken up the actual calculations. I'm not going to go through everything here, just showing a few illustrations. Yeah, I always like to provide this to my students when they sort of come on my courses. Say, here you are, you have this to kick you off with, so you've got something to work on, because this is going to be used throughout what is going to be your studies. And then I want to go down a little bit further here. You've even got these really quick shortcut functions. Do you need to calculate a full NPV? No. You have an NPV function that will do that for you. An internal rate of return? No. You have a function that does that for you. And even something at AFM that you didn't see at FM, modified internal rate of return, you have a function for you. And then below, yeah, I've shown you how it could be used, for example, in things like a bond price calculation. And then what came into AFM for option pricing was the concept of the Black-Scholes option pricing calculator, the BSOP calculator, where all we have to do is put all the variables in, and out pops where is going to be all of the numbers. So effectively, when you're doing the analysis, you've got so many of these skills, these shortcut functions available to you. Yeah. And like I said, I've got a summary of other things on there, like how to deal with beta factors that used to be on the old pen and paper. Now you can do it very straightforwardly using what is going to be your spreadsheet software. And like I said, for me, I like to always make sure that the candidates have got all of these in one place. They understand how they're going to be used, and they're going to be used throughout the whole of the syllabus as you go through what is going to be the learning of AFM, and then applying it to what is going to be the relevant exam style questions. So I may make three closing comments here about ACCA AFM, paper which I love immensely. Yeah. First of all, it's relevant to all students. Whether you are working in practice or whether you are working in industry and commerce, AFM is relevant to you. Whether you're working in practice, as I've said before, you could be working in an audit environment, where in an advisory environment where you have to understand the principles of corporate finance and the idea of valuations of what is going to be companies, etc. Certainly in the area of what is going to be commerce and industry, that's going to be needed. Secondly, it relates to the real world factors of business and finance. So in a recent event that occurred in the UK, where we saw, well, a recent event in the UK, a recent worldwide event, UK event, when we saw this problem where our risk-free rate started to rise dramatically because of some, let's say, errors made by a particular prime minister and a particular chancellor, and we are suddenly risk-free rates starting to go up. You can build that into your answers under commercial acumen. We saw recently Elon Musk buy Twitter, a company which is now going through a reconstruction. So look what happened there. He's bought Twitter, the value of Twitter, the idea of what is the reconstruction, etc. that you're going through. Yeah. So it relates to what is going to be real life events. And I can promise you it's a really enjoyable subject to learn, because with AFM, when you're learning it, you're picking up those mechanics and those skills and understanding. And the big thing with AFM, when you're producing an answer, majority of the time, you know you've got it right. Yeah, majority of you know you've got it right. Because if you're doing a calculation for an NPV or a valuation or a forward contract, money market hedge or an option, You know you've put those numbers in correctly, and you know you've got an output, and you can look at it and say, yeah, that is reasonable. And that's what makes this paper, right, such a good paper to do, because you know that what comes out most of the time, you know you're going to effectively have got it right. Certainly on the calculation side, and we know that accounts for a huge part of what is in this paper, and then you're adding the comments in effectively accordingly on that basis. So relevant to all students, whether they work in practice or whether they work in industry commerce, relates to real life events in business and finance, and I promise you, very, very enjoyable to learn, because you know that when you've done something, you've got that element correct. The final point is that if you want advice on how to study AFM, please get in touch with me. Look, I run a series of ACCA approved courses on AFM. I've got a nice range of courses. I've got what is going to be platinum package and package plus courses, which are platinum approved by the ACCA. I've got other courses which add to those, things like video exam kit, revision courses, and mock exam courses. And also, I do have a series of free resources. This particular video is on one of my free resources. It's on YouTube channel. I also have a blogging page on what is going to be my website. So I try to cover all the potentials. And I hope you can hear from my tone. I love AFM. I absolutely love AFM. It's a fantastic examination to do. You have my contact details. Please do get in touch. If this video is beneficial, please give it a like. Stay safe. Stay well.